Do you remember that report that tried to shut GB News down? That said, I quote, GB News hates Islam and Muslims? Well, now, the Muslim Council of Britain, who were behind that report, have been exposed in a big report that calls the group a bad faith actor. So, the Muslim Council of Britain, they set up the Centre for Media Monitoring in 2018, and they put out that horrible report about GB News that, for example, tallied up using an AI software, went through all their previous recordings of episodes, figured out how many times they've mentioned words like grooming gangs, for example, and essentially said this is a channel that is full of anti-Muslim hatred. They tried to make recommendations to Ofcom to really clamp down on GB News. It was clearly an attempt to shut the channel down, but now this report has come out that makes them look like complete and utter idiots. Let's just take a look at the foreword written by Andrew Neil of this report. He says, "It's sometimes said that the British media habitually misrepresents and slanders Muslims. Much of the apparent evidence for this claim has been gathered by a body called the Centre for Media Monitoring, which is, or was until this week, part of the Muslim Council of Britain. This report by Policy Exchange forensically demonstrates that the Centre for Media Monitoring, its evidence and its conclusions are badly flawed. It shows how the Centre for Media Monitoring has a purpose far wider than the correction of supposed factual error. It seeks, in its own words, to, quote, take control of the narrative about Muslims, enforcing a tendentious view of Islam, and sometimes seeking to suppress truthful, factual reporting which happens to contradict that view. It shows how the Centre for Media Monitoring has been accepted without much scrutiny by some senior figures in the media and the press regulator IPSO, how it has gained influence in their organisations, and how, as a result, it may be succeeding in some of its aims. It shows how the Centre for Media Monitoring is part of a wider campaign for legal restrictions on what you can say about Islam, with fundamental implications for free speech. The increasing role played by self-appointed, unrepresentative, and often rather small activist groups in shaping public debate has been examined too little. This value report helps to fill that gap. It certainly does fill a gap, because this organisation has, as Andrew Neil says there, been taken far too seriously when some of the claims that they make are absolutely bogus. You know, I won't go through all the details of that report that they did on GB News. I did at the time when it came out, but you know, as I said, they did things like just ran an AI software through all of GB News' previous episodes and tallied up how many times they mentioned words like Islam, like grooming gangs, etc. And as a consequence of that, concluded that this is a channel full of anti-Muslim hatred. I mean, that is not a well-founded conclusion to make. I mean, their reasoning in that report was just absolutely bogus. And the fact that anyone took it seriously, it is beyond belief. But this report that came out was, you know, a huge struggle for GB News. They really had to fight against it and, you know, fight for their survival pretty much, because what the claims that they made about the channel were, you know, pretty damning. But anyway, let's take a look at the GB News article on this. GB News have, of course, been very keen to report on this story because it sets the record straight about that report that was put out about them previously. So the Policy Exchange put out this 94-page report. Of course, I will not go through all of that. I've shown you the foreword at the beginning, at least. But let's just take a look at a few of the highlights that GB News have pointed out here. So they titled the report "Bad Faith Actor," really calling them out for who they are. And the Centre for Media Monitoring, they claim that 60% of stories about Muslims are, quote, offending and negative, but actually this report found out that only just one complaint made by that group actually resulted in a newspaper changing the record, changing what they said in their article, which I think just goes to show how uncredible this group is, because they are so often going to papers, going to the media saying, you can't say this, that's evil, that's Islamophobic, that's not allowed, when actually that's not the case, and they're completely wrong, they're completely out of their depth, they don't understand free speech in this country. They are trying to get things taken off the internet that paint Islam in a bad light, perhaps even if they are completely factual, and good on the journalists, aside from that, you know, one for actually standing up for themselves. some of the stuff that they have tried to suppress in the media is beyond belief. So, for example, you've got a Manchester terror attack report put out by AP that used the phrase knife-wielding man yelling Islamic slogans. They took issue with that. They weren't happy with the fact that they said Islamic slogans. Okay, you cannot call out Islamist extremism. In the eyes of the Centre for Media Monitoring set up by the Muslim Council of Britain, it would seem, even if it is completely factual. And what is also really, really shocking is these guys, they took issue with Jihadi John being called a terrorist. I mean, this guy was, live streamed beheading people, and you don't want to call him a terrorist because that would be a bit too mean. That would slander the faith of Islam too much. I mean, it's beyond belief. I mean, if anything, I would say that Muslims should call out actual terrorists and Islamist extremists so that they can draw a line between moderate Muslims and people who are extremists, rather than backing up the extremists and acting as though you're complicit in their extremism. Do they not see the logic there? Clearly not. It is absolutely shocking. And also, when it comes to the grooming gangs, one thing I have said is that you need to have people in the Muslim community and in the Pakistani community calling out the grooming gangs epidemic so that they can set the record straight and show we are good people, we are a good community, this is an extreme part of the community, and we're going to call them out and we're going to hold them to account and make sure that there are consequences. We're not going to welcome grooming gang perpetrators back into our communities with open arms after we commit these crimes. But the Muslim Council of Britain, under the guise of the Centre for Media Monitoring, this thing they've set up that doesn't include the word Muslim so that they can act like it's independent when it's clearly not, they have taken huge issue with channels like GB News talking about the grooming gangs and exposing them and exposing the link between the grooming gangs and Pakistani Muslim men being massively overrepresented in the data. And it says here, that, it had, of course, long been established, including by multiple court cases and official reports, that grooming gangs were and are real. And, of course, we've had the report by Louise Casey come out, which, confirms that there is that link between, Pakistani Muslim men and these crimes. It's not something that GB News just made up because they hate Muslims and certain ethnic groups. It's just simply not the case. We're trying to show the truth, or the channel was. Also, what else have we got here? So this is pretty shocking, guys. So one thing that the Centre for Media Monitoring complained about, and this just shows how backwards they are, they criticised TV dramas for showing Muslim characters who don't want to wear a hijab, or who drink alcohol, or who are gay. I mean, that is crazy. I mean, this I may be wrong, but this suggests to me that the people running this show, they are not moderate Muslims. They are extreme. They are Muslims who want to shut down free speech, freedom of expression, the ability to criticize other religions, but they also are unaccepting of people within their own religion who maybe choose not to wear a hijab, or maybe who are gay, okay? I'm just absolutely disgusted by that. I mean, I did, the Channel 4 show I was on, we had Bushra on the show. She is a Muslim woman who chooses not to wear a hijab. The Centre for Media Monitoring angry about that? Have they put in a complaint to Channel 4? I don't know. But it sounds like it's something that they would consider doing, which to me sounds absolutely crazy. You've also had the Guardian cited the Centre for Media Monitoring's inaccurate research concerning GB News. Yeah, that GB News report, that one that we've spoken about is... Yeah, I mean, places like The Guardian, they were lapping that up. They were like, yeah, the GB News are finally being shown by this official independent body that they're full of anti-Muslim hatred. The claims that the Centre for Media Monitoring made were absolutely bogus. And this is what the authors of the report said, and I couldn't agree with this more. The report provides all who need it with the evidence that the Centre for Media Monitoring is a bad faith actor. It should not be engaged with or taken at face value by journalists, regulators, or anyone else. So there we go. Should not be taken seriously. The fact they've ever been taken seriously is quite frankly just astonishing. Let's, of course, just for balance, read out their statement here. So, this report is nothing but a politically motivated hit job, says the Centre for Media Monitoring, riddled with inaccuracies, distortions, and smears. It comes from an organisation that has long sought to influence our media into negatively framing British Muslims. We're not surprised they're upset as we call them out. They misrepresent our record, do not deal with the facts we present, and rely on guilty by association. Every major accusation falls apart under scrutiny. It's laughable that they accuse us of censorship when our vision is simply responsible reporting of Islam and Muslims. Is that really too much to ask? That's what they say. What I would say back to that is that the report that they wrote on GB News was, to use their words, riddled with inaccuracies, distortions, and smears. So I don't think that they are one to speak. Anyway, that is the latest. I'm Chloe Dobbs. Thank you very much for watching this video. Make sure you subscribe to Reasoned if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any more videos. Catch you next time.